So, some of you may be wondering, why is Kai wearing toilet paper on his head? And to be completely honest, Chump had a nice hat, I had a sombrero, and didn't want to offend anyone. I think it's time to take it off and start the podcast.
I quite liked that. I quite liked your hat, to be honest.
I did too. I thought it was quite creative.
I thought it was pretty inventive. I thought it was quite delightful.
See, the engineering degree did come into use at some point.
Yeah, jeepers, bro. I'm not sure what kamikaze vibe you had going there, but it's pretty interesting.
But it worked. We made the entrance, and here we are.
It did work, and here we are.
Our second podcast being recorded in a studio. So what are we going to be discussing today?
So the very first podcast, our first question was, who am I? So you guys don't actually know who we are. So we thought, today would actually be a perfect time to have a nice introduction into who me and Kai are. Kai, would you like to start proceedings? Maybe chat to us a bit about your life?
A little bit about my life, or where to start. I guess the beginning is probably a fantastic place
What's the beginning and what's the end?
And the middle. So, I was born on the 29th of July 1998 in Cape Town. I've literally lived here my entire life. The same house, actually, my entire life, which is strange, because I know you've been moving around a fair bit, which I'm sure we'll hear about now. I'd say, as a child, what was I like? I was quite carefree for a while, but I did lose a good friend when I was 3 years old, which did trigger some anxiety. I went to see therapists for a couple of years. And I do remember, as well, as I was saying to you earlier today, I've got some memories of, being at like weddings, and I'd be like, ooh, I want to tap the glass, like ding, 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 make a speech in front of all these people. Like I remember also singing at a church for my grandparents, the renewal of their vows. So I lost that little spark after the...
Sorry, just saying hello to the viewers. How's it going, guys?
To the viewers, fair enough. I should also give it a little... That was quite.
So you're saying you renewed your grandparents' wedding vows?
I didn't renew their vows. I think the pastor did that.
I feel like you should have, bro. Especially now.
Yeah. And I lost that spark for a few years. Went to see a couple of therapists and stuff. That's getting quite deep already now. We only like 3-4 minutes in. But anyway, my early childhood was quite a sheltered one.
Sheltered childhood. Sure, yeah, vastly different to my childhood in many ways. I would say I was very privileged growing up. I was very fortunate. By no means did I have a so-called difficult life, but I definitely experienced some things that my soul has obviously chosen for this journey and for this life. So I was born 2 months after Kai on the 29th of September 1998. And interestingly enough, I searched up the other day what my life path number is. Now, I'm not a firm believer in numerology, but it said that I am a healer. So interestingly enough, only you can be a healer if you've experienced emotional wounds in your life. So if you've gone through hardship, only can you really teach from that wisdom and sharing that wisdom. And so everything kind of started for me in the UK. I was born there. My parents overstayed their visa. Naughty. So we got the hell out of there after a year and a half or two. I was surrounded by a lot of people. We literally lived in a huge house with about 10, 15 other people. In the UK, yes. And they used to babysit me, look after me. If my mom and dad wanted to run off to a U2 concert at the Wembley Square, I'd be at home. I was called the Fat Buddha. It was a little fat piggin, honestly. Like when I looked at photos of me, I was like, who ate all the pies?
And now you're the fucking beautiful Rip Buddha.
Okay, let me not get too overwhelmed. How's that?
Sorry.
So
the sexual tension so early on.
I know.
My word.
Kaya, stop your nonsense.
Sorry, I can't help it.
So moved over to SA, went to Harfield Village. That's the first place that I lived at. And my very first memory is trying to chase after a rabbit called Coco in our garden. And that's my very first memory of my existence. Soon after that, my parents split up. They just had a lot of altercations. They went on the same life path. And I had a lot of instability growing up. My parents, they really sacrificed a lot to try to provide for me. So they both actually had waitering jobs for numerous years. My mom actually, she got her honors in economics, and she never really fully utilized that. And she just stuck to waitering, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of just fixed income. So that helped provide me with a bit of an education. So I went through to Camps Bay, preparatory school, and that's where I started. I was quite a quiet little child, I didn't really interact much with other kids. I was quite reserved, you know. It was pretty evident, you know, every time I was a sheep or a tree in a school play, I mean, I'd come on and be like, ah, and that was my line. It was
completely different. So I remember for my first, nativity play? Is that the word for it?
I think so.
So they wanted to make me Joseph. Mary's hubba.
That's pretty cool.
And I was like, no, I don't want to be Joseph. I want to be fucking Father Christmas. So
you want to be Father Christmas?
So there's pictures of me chilling there. Everyone's doing their thing, and I'm chilling there with the fake little beard, the red hat, and everything. Just
fascinating the contrast. So I was at Campus Bay Preparatory School, and you know, in my off time and my holidays, my grandparents raised me, Paul and Bertie. And they were instrumental in my upbringing. And a firm belief that I've come to a realization in lockdown is that grandparents should be far more instrumental in your upbringing. I think it's very difficult to define a child if you haven't defined yourself yet. And often you find with the older generations, they at least have a better sense of who they are. And they're far more tolerant, more patient, more compassionate. So through seeing them every holiday, that really helped me. You know, I used to go to Greyton and run around in my little Michael Schumacher Formula One outfit. And I used to ride the bike. They taught me how to ride a bike without the wheels. I used to do monkey bars with armbands, and I used to swim without the armbands. Helped me tie my shoelaces. Like, I learned a hell of a lot from them. And then subsequently, I actually went on a few overseas trips with them, and that really broadened my eyes to what was out there. And I was very fortunate to have that. But my upbringing was also riddled with a lot of hardship, you know. In grade 1, when I was 7 years old, my dad had to leave. He had to go work on the yacht, and he still works on the yachts overseas in order to provide for me, because there was nothing for him here, you know. Didn't actually have a degree to his name. He dropped out of Technicon, and he needed some means to support me. So he left, and that still is one of my biggest traumas. You know, it's one of my biggest triggers of sort of loss and neglect, and that's one of my fears as well. So that has actually moved its way through me throughout my life. I've really struggled with intimacy and vulnerability, because out of that I would have a fear of losing someone. So every time I got close to someone, you know, I would either lose them or be emotionally dependent on their love and receive it, because I never really felt like I had received enough of it. You know, as a child, you just want more all the time. So that was in grade 1, and that was very difficult for me. I still remember the first time he left. And, you know, it's something I've had to come to terms with, something I've grappled with throughout my life. And, you know, numerous other things. You know, my mom also struggled with addiction growing up. I have a very clear, vivid memory of crying in a car, and we were, I think, Milnerton side, and she had gone there to go see her gardener, but it was actually, in fact, to get drugs. And I remember crying in the car, and I couldn't really remember the details, but I remember her having an altercation with the guy about 50, 100 meters away. Only later did I find out, a number of years later, that he actually held her at gunpoint, and I didn't actually know that. So I was in the car and I witnessed that, and I still carry that memory with me to this day. So there was a lot of instability. I moved around a lot. I had a lot of flats that we were staying at. A lot of my mom had, you know, different people coming into her life, different spouses or different boyfriends. Also trying to find herself, you know. I mean, she wasn't that equipped with her upbringing. She also had defects of her own. So like I said, it's so difficult to define a child if you don't know how to define yourself. So often being an only child, you know, I used to spend time on weekends entertaining myself, building Lego, building puzzles, and that actually contributes to why I study what I study. So I study accounting, and it's almost like moving puzzle pieces of financial statements like I did as a child. So that's also quite interesting for me. So moving on, you know, I get to grade 2 and grade 3, and we finally move out of a flat. We're actually staying at Paul and Bertie's flat, and we move into Tamboerskloof, and this is the golden era. This is my childhood. This is like my formative years, and that's where I met Felix and Nikki and Jack. And jeepers, we were scabangers. We used to get up to absolute nonsense. We used to drop off fireworks in the guest house pools. Heard a huge freaking explosion once. Hid behind a hedge, and then the security guard was just looking at us, just staring there. And we're like, oh my goodness, like this guy, he literally looks like he's about to take my life. So that was definitely one of the things. One of my other memories from Tamboerskloof is being kicked in the stomach by a donkey. I went, donkey! I went over to touch the foal, and then I just got naughted by this absolute...
That's dangerous though, dude.
I was about 3 or 4, so that was actually before I'd even moved to Tamboerskloof. But those years were formative for me, you know. And then I left Camps Bay Primary School and I moved over to Sax, and that was in grade 6. And then me and Nikki formed such a bond. My oldest friend is Nikki Arnold, and we used to get lift clubs together. And every morning when I was taking lift club, or my mom was, we used to play Xbox on my bed with like a Kinect, and we used to like jump around, and it was great for me. That I needed that sort of companionship, because I never really had that growing up. And then, you know, we got a dog and we had the family life. You know, my mom sacrificed a lot to just give me some essence of what a family was, because I didn't have any realization of what it meant to have a brother or a sister or a father. You know, I went through life a lot of the time trying to find myself just by me. But in essence, that's actually built me up. You know, it's managed to help me formulate some sort of idea of who I am. So strength doesn't lie in hardship. Strength lies in overcoming hardship and using hardship as a propellant to get you through life. So all your joy is actually held in those deepest moments of sorrow. So I can still recall every time my father would say goodbye, go overseas, and it would break my heart, you know, having to say goodbye to this person. And it actually led to me bullying other kids at school. I used to be angry, upset, frustrated, and I used to name call, talk to other kids harshly, you know, I mistreated animals, and it's because I didn't have the tools to deal with it. And then growing up in high school, you know, I developed an alter ego on weekends. I mean, when I met Felix, you know, we managed to rekindle our relationship after I went to boarding school in grade 8 and moved to Hout Bay subsequently. And I managed to find an alter ego on weekends, like a Tyler Durden, you know, go out, get drunk, have a good time, you know, I objectified women as well to an extent. I really did. That's the absolute truth. You know, I used to go out and just try validate myself externally, make people to make me feel good because I couldn't validate myself. I didn't have self-love yet. So what you do is you just seek love from everyone else. And subsequently, you know, I didn't know how to actually mask how I felt on the inside. So I had to overcompensate for where I lacked. And that obviously led to a bit of arrogance, led to egotism, you know, just a little bit of a overpowerness of just trying to overcompensate as a result. So throughout high school, I struggled with identity. I had an identity crisis. I couldn't really find what my niche was. You know, I didn't know if I was the sportsman or the academic. I didn't know if I was the joller, if I was the popular one. So I was kind of caught in a couple of just in a net of unknown, and I'm sure a lot of people are currently in high school going through the same thing. You're not sure where you fit in, and the thing is, you're your own classification in your own right. There's no need for you to fit into a bracket. You are your own bracket. You have you don't even have parameters in your life. You can be anything you want to be, you know. So in high school, in an all boys school, there was a lot of friction. There was the jock squad, and then there was the leftovers, then there was the geeks. And what I did was I jumped from each squad trying to find out just, you know, who am I? Where do I fit in? So, you know, in class, I didn't want to raise my hand. I didn't want to talk. I didn't like doing orals. I hated doing mondelings. I mean, hello, my name is... Then I had like a little squeal once, bro. I had a little cry. I was like, I don't know how to speak this language. I was so finished, bro, honestly. And then in grade 11, you know, my mom got admitted into rehab, and that also really struck me very hard. That hits a core to me. She had demons of her own, and she didn't have the tools to overcome them. So she got admitted into rehab. That knocked my confidence hugely, as it normally would. And she also had a cancer scare in grade 10. So there were a lot of numerous challenges that I had to overcome. And then I got riddled with acne in grade 11 as well. So I would avoid female contact on weekends. I didn't go out in grade 11. I stayed at home. I was very insecure about who I was, about my body, and I didn't have direction. I was directionless. I didn't know which role model to look for. I didn't have any role models, so to speak, at that time. And you know, it led to me in grade 11 just trying to find my feet, trying to find a platform. Then my skin started coming right. Then my mum came out of rehab. And then, you know, I heard she was pregnant, and I had a little lamaki of a baby sister. So slowly but surely, things were actually starting to come my way. You know, I was starting to gain a little bit of confidence in myself, trying to understand who and what I was. And then I started accepting myself. And through acceptance, I started to accept others around me as well. And even at that time, I always knew, I was like, there's so much more to what meets the eye here. There is so much more to this life. And I remember that in matric, but I was like, I don't know how to really engage on that level. I don't know how to tap in to that sort of sixth sense of intuition. So I get to matric, start finding some confidence, start finding my friends. And that's something that is so important in growing up, is having the right group of friends. Having friends, your environment necessarily, it does mold you to an extent, their beliefs, their speech, you know, a lot of things, their actions, and that makes you who you are. So got through that, got to first year, and I just jawled my heart out, honestly.
I remember that, dude. Your first year literally seemed like just a year of jawling and nothing else.
It literally was. You know, I woke up one day with scabs on my face because I had managed to not defeat gravity, and I was walking home and the pavement licked my face a few times, and then I stood in dog shit and I had blood on my jeans the next morning, and I chipped my tooth.
Sounds like a good night.
One of my best friends chipped my tooth. His name's Matthew Booth, but it's obviously Matthew Tooth. I mean, So get to first year, then meet someone in second year, a girl that actually schmucks me, and I'm like, oh wow, like she's showing me 30% love when I can only love myself 20%. So I was vulnerable. Then I get into a relationship with her, and within a month of dating her, I found out her brother's got a so-called life-threatening tumor. It's not malignant. It was benign. And that placed so much pressure on our relationship as well. Coming from different cultures, she was Afrikaans, I was English, and it just taught me so much, you know, taught me to just be broadened in my knowledge and really to learn acceptance. But also she taught me that there's a lot of demons that I had that I hadn't dealt with. A lot of journaling, a lot of escapism, you know, trying to distract the mind, trying to find ways to, you know, navigate through life without having to deal with my issues. And what you're running from has caught you already, and that's the truth. And I knew deep down what the truth was. I did not get any closure on my upbringing. I hadn't confronted my mom on many things, on neglect, on not having a babysitter some nights, being alone at home. And those were things that I had to deal with. And unfortunately, well, fortunately now, last year, I experienced the first step of a spiritual awakening, so to speak. And the first step, I would say, of a spiritual awakening is knowing that you're living a lie. So I knew last year I was living a lie. There was a lot of things that I was lying about. I'd built a denial system around my beliefs, and it was starting to escape. It was starting to come out sideways. You know, the more times you try to repress a feeling, your willpower gets so drained, so exhausting trying to repress these feelings of anger, resentment, rage. You just want to understand, like, why me? Why did this happen to me? You want to find some sense of meaning in all of it. So I sent her an email and I said, Mom, we need to talk. There's some things that are bothering me. You know, I don't feel like you know me. I don't feel like I know you. I can't go on my life, you know, with this baggage. I will finish very soon, by the way. I know I've been talking a hell of a lot, but
no, carry on. I'm enjoying it.
But it brought me to the choice point, and that was, do I send this email? You know, do I do it? Do I extend myself? And I had so much fear. You know, growing up, I had adult child syndrome, so a lot of that is basically side effects or defects from having someone as an alcoholic, you know, in your life. You judge yourself harshly. So throughout high school, if I got 70% and I wanted 80, I'd be like, where the hell was that 10%? And then if I got 80, then I'd be like, where was the 20%? And it just kept going on and on, always beating myself up, basically, not being good enough, trying to achieve excellence and perfection in everything I did. And that led to performance anxiety in sport. That led to numerous things, not having leadership qualities, not being able to like express myself in a leadership role, of which I really wanted to be. I wanted to be a leader so badly. And deep down, I was like, but I don't have it. I don't have those traits. I wasn't a prefect. And it's bullshit. You can be a leader in your own right. You don't need to have that title or role to be a leader in society. And then during lockdown, my mom started giving me spiritual books. And then I started being aware of the illusion of what's beyond this world, that we are actually dreaming 24/7. That everything is, like we said in our first podcast, just a distortion of what is truth. So your truth is completely different to someone else's, and that's okay. But that means it's a dream. And when you start knowing it's a dream, you can start deciding, do I suffer in this dream or can I enjoy this dream? Fourth stage, I get to the instruction from my masters. I have a deep meditation and I go out and I start an NGO, and then we start this podcast. And I'm going to tell you how me and Kai, he's going to discuss more about his sort of life story, but we also want to add value to this podcast and tell you, you know, it's a process. It's not like we just got here in the click of a finger and had a spiritual awakening. It's a lot of it takes work, which we will discuss a bit later. A lot of it is self-empowerment through acts, making choices. So then I had transformation and rebirth, and I'm still transforming. I'm still going through the motions. And then the rest of the stages, you know, the trial, and then eventually the great awakening of self. It's probably going to take me the rest of my life to achieve. So that's just a little bit about me, bro.
That was a lot about you.
That was a lot about me.
Even things that I didn't know.
Yeah, jeepers.
Sure.
A good 10 minutes. I'm sorry to chew your ear off, guys, but that had to...
We fucking loved it, bro. Or we.
Thank you very much.
Was that a seagull?
Fuck it, bro.
I mean, we are on the beach right now, so I mean, it could have been a seagull.
Where's my pina colada, bro?
Your pina colada? I don't know where your pina colada is, man.
The little sipperoo of the water over there.
Yeah.
Try to take my Steel's chip just now, bro. Did you know that?
Unbelievable.
There's waterfront mother...
Unbelievable. I had a
rats with wings, bro.
Crab biting on my finger now as well.
My octopus teacher, brother.
Okay, so sure. I definitely underperformed in my little description of my life story. So let me get back to it. So